You think the truth will save you, Mrs. Hart? It buried your husband. It will bury you too. That was the last thing she heard before the lights went out in the Vailtech cellar. The next moment, she woke up to silence. Her wrists bruised the air, thick with secrets and a voice on an old recorder whispering her dead husband's name. Before we dive in, let me know. What time are you listening to this, and where are you? Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. Evelyn Hart woke before dawn. Across the street, a dog barked at nothing. A trash bin rolled down the slope. Same town, same noise. Bills waited beside the toaster, their corners curling with damp. The red stamp on one envelope made her stomach sink. Mortgage. Her husband's name still printed on everything. Even gone, he signed for her. The radio mentioned Vailtech's new donation to the library. The name still tightened something in her chest. It had once been stitched across her husband's jacket. Now it was everywhere like a rumor that refused to fade. The walk to the cafe took 5 minutes. Hollow beans smelled of roasted beans and damp coats. The bell chimed whenever someone entered. She ordered her usual. The barista avoided her eyes. People in Ashbury were careful around her now. Morning, Mrs. Hart, came a voice behind her. Caleb Monroe. Tall, tired, his coat dripping. I heard about the bank, he said. If you need help, I'm fine, she answered, then softened. I'll figure it out. He hesitated. I used to work for Vailtech. Your husband was one of the best engineers. People still talk about him. They talk because he's gone, she said. Not because they remember. This town forgets nothing, he murmured. It just pretends to. Then he left coffee untouched. She stayed watching drops trail down the glass. Pretending to forget, maybe that was what she'd been doing too. Thought of Caleb's words, of how people looked at her since the funeral, of how little she had known the man she'd buried. The next day, she sat on a hard bench in the courthouse, palms flat on her knees, counting her breaths. The letter had ordered her to appear. No one said why. A clerk called her name. She followed him into the chamber, surprised at how many people had come. Familiar faces filled the back rows, whispering in the rhythm of gossip. Across the room, a man in a gray suit sorted through files. Representative of Vailtech, he introduced himself, polished and distant. We're here to clarify a property dispute concerning the late Mr. Hart's handling of confidential material. The words struck cold. He continued. Several internal letters surfaced publicly. These belong to Vailtech. Their release has harmed the company. I didn't release anything, she said. He ignored her. Possession of company property is unlawful. We request an order to retrieve and seal remaining materials. Someone whispered, knew she'd caused trouble. The comment slid under her skin. When the judge ended the session, she walked out alone. No one met her eyes. Caleb Monroe waited beneath the awning, coat dark with drizzle. I saw your name on the docket, he said. You shouldn't have come alone. They didn't say I needed a lawyer. Vailtech always brings one, he replied. You did nothing wrong, but they'll make it sound like you did. She clutched her bag. I just want my house safe. That's what they're counting on, your fear, he said. She didn't answer. The steps were slick. The baby moved again beneath her ribs. He offered his arm. She shook her head and went on. By the parking lot, her shoes were soaked. She sat in the car before starting it. Across the street, 2 men from Vailtech talked under an umbrella, one glancing her way. She looked down until they left. At-home mail spilled from the box, flyers, bills, a notice from the power company. She dropped them on the table. The silver key still lay there, catching a strip of gray light. She brewed tea this time, lemon and ginger filling the small kitchen. Steam blurred her glasses. The words confidential material echoed in her head. There were boxes she hadn't touched, drawers unopened. Maybe they were right. Maybe something of theirs was still here. The phone rang once, then stopped. No one spoke. She waited, then set it down. A car passed, tires hissing through puddles. She drew the curtains, traced the rim of her cup. The baby kicked, a small reminder to keep steady. She put on her coat and walked to the store. The clerk avoided her eyes. A man in line whispered, "That's her from Vailtech." At the intersection, a truck rolled by with the Vailtech logo in bright blue. She turned away. Dusk came without warning. She reheated soup, ate slowly. The house creaked as if trying to breathe. Faces from the courtroom hovered in her mind, those who stared, those who didn't. Sorting through the mail, she almost missed a plain envelope, a notice intent to repossess the house if the court ruled against her. The signature matched the law firm from that morning. Her hand shook soup spilling across the table. She wiped it absently, eyes fixed on the key. A car started somewhere and faded. She lay down staring into the dark, trying not to think how quickly life tilted from routine to ruin. Gravel crunched, a door slammed. She froze, then pulled the curtain aside, just the mailman leaving a bundle by the fence. Relief came and went. Bills never arrived this early. A knock rattled the door. She dried her hands and opened it halfway. Caleb stood there, hair uncombed, a file tucked under his arm. Vailtech filed a motion to fast-track your case, he said. They don't waste time. He stepped in when she didn't stop him. The house smelled faintly of coffee and dust. They're pushing hard because you still have company property. Do you? Not that I know of. Unless they mean this. She showed him the key. He frowned. That's from their storage division. Why would your husband have it? He worked there. Maybe it's nothing. Nothing with Vailtech is ever nothing. She hesitated. Would you come with me? I need to see where it leads. Fine. But if anything feels off, we leave. They drove to the storage yard, rows of rusted doors, weeds, splitting the pavement, a crooked sign, Vail Storage. Authorized personnel only. No guard, no movement. Evelyn held the key. I just want to know what's left of him. Unit 17 stood halfway down the row. The padlock turned smoothly. Crates lined the walls. A metal box on top read, Project Helix. Confidential. She reached for it. Caleb stopped her. If this belongs to them, then they'll take it back after I understand what it is. He let go. The lid opened. Blueprints, letters, photos. Her husband shaking hands with Richard Vail, his smile tight. Caleb skimmed a page. These are internal reports, fund diversions, safety violations, power grid, failures. This isn't engineering, it's cover-up. Evelyn found one envelope in her husband's handwriting. If you ever see this, it means I failed. Vail won't stop until everyone forgets what happened. Her throat tightened. He knew she whispered. A sharp thump broke the air. Caleb turned tense, but the doorway was empty. He motioned to move. She slipped the letter into her coat while he took photos. As they reached the car, a black SUV rolled past the gate-tinted windows, hiding whoever sat inside. That's no coincidence, Caleb said. Keep walking. They reached the car, the gate creaking shut behind them. The drive home stretched long and silent. They'll come after you, he said finally. You opened what they buried. They already took him, she murmured. What else can they take? When they reached her house, she thanked him, went in and spread the letter beside her cup. The ink had blurred, but the words were clear. He had known, and he had tried to protect her. Tires screeched somewhere down the road. She didn't move. She gathered the papers into a folder, hid them behind the bookshelf. Later, Caleb called. I'll make copies of everything. Keep your door locked tonight. I always do. She checked the locks, then sat with a cup of tea gone cold. The baby shifted under her hand, slow and steady, as if to remind her the world was still turning. The phone rang. She let it, hoping it would stop. It didn't. When she finally picked up, only a slow breath answered before the call ended. From the porch, neighbors swept their driveways. A few nodded her way without warmth. She returned the gesture. A pile of newspapers sat at the corner. One headline caught her eye. Local widow accuses Vailtech of cover-up. Her stomach twisted. The article used her name, twisted her words from court. At Hollow Bean Cafe, conversations died when she walked in. The girl at the counter fumbled with the change. Evelyn thanked her and moved to a corner table. Caleb arrived soon after, folders under his arm, eyes tired. You saw the paper? I saw it. They're isolating you, he said. That's how Vail works. They ruin your name before they ruin your life. They're halfway there, she muttered, staring at her untouched cup. He didn't argue. He opened one folder, copies of the letters they'd found, each sealed in plastic. A friend at the county office checked Vailtech's filings. Millions missing, hidden under community projects. So my husband knew. He knew enough to scare them, Caleb said. He tried to tell someone. Laughter rose from a nearby table. One woman glanced over and whispered to the others. Evelyn stood gathering her things. I need to go. There's something I want to check. The study carried a faint trace of mildew. She pulled another box closer, sorting through receipts and sketches. Near the bottom lay an envelope marked personal. Do not open. The handwriting wasn't her husband's. Inside were photocopies of checks with the Vailtech logo and a list of local officials, each name beside a dollar amount. At the bottom, confirmed destruction of originals. Her hands went cold. She reached for her phone ready to call Caleb when a car engine roared nearby. Tires scraped gravel, then stopped. She froze. The mail slot clicked. An unmarked envelope slid through and landed on the rug. She unfolded the note. "Stop digging, Mrs. Hart. You have a child to think about." She dropped it on the desk. The letters shifted in the draft from the open pane. She shut it, locked it, sat down, forcing her breath to steady. When Caleb arrived, she handed him the note. His jaw tightened. "They're watching you." "I know," she said. "But if I stop, what happens to the truth? Truth won't matter if they reach you first." "I don't need to matter," she said. "I just need to know." They copied the new documents, sealed them in a fresh folder. Caleb urged her to leave town, take everything to Portland, where someone he trusted might help. She nodded but didn't commit. The baby kicked again, a quiet reminder she wasn't moving alone. After he left, she hid the folder in a broken drawer and stood there watching streetlights flicker through mist. A cat darted across the road. The town seemed to fold inward, smaller each night. Her phone buzzed. Another unknown number. She let it ring out. A text followed. He died because he didn't listen. "You're next." She read it once, deleted it, unplugged the phone. No point replying to shadows. The kettle clicked off, startling her. She poured tea, forgot to drink it. Thoughts drifted to her husband, the call from the plant, the word accident, how quickly people stopped asking questions. Wind rattled the porch railing. She pulled her robe tighter, checked the locks again. Before bed, she glanced at the drawer. The wood creaked as if something inside exhaled. She left it be, too tired to think. In bed, she curled on her side, one arm around her belly. The baby moved steady, insistent. "We're still here," she whispered. Not brave, not a promise, just something true enough to hold on to. Unknown numbers kept calling through the week. She stopped answering. The silence on the line had become familiar, like someone studying her breathing. An envelope waited by the fence, printed neatly, "You're being watched." No logo, no signature. She folded it twice, slipped it into her coat pocket, and went about her day. Caleb arrived half an hour later, tie loose, face drawn. "We need to talk," he said, stepping in without waiting. A folder slipped from his handpapers, scattering across the table. "Vale filed a harassment complaint against me, accusing me of stealing records." "You didn't," she said. "They don't need proof," he muttered, rubbing his forehead. "Just noise." She poured coffee, neither touched. His pacing made the house feel smaller. "If they're turning on you," she said, "they must be scared." Or tightening the rope. A knock cut him off. A man in a dark coat stood there, calm and formal. "Mrs. Hart, Mr. Vale would like to see you. It's about your husband's case." Caleb stepped forward. "She's not meeting anyone without counsel." The man's smile was polite. "Then you're both invited." They drove to Vale Tech in silence. The building loomed on the edge of town, glass metal, nothing human. Everything smelled faintly of disinfectant. A long corridor led them to a small conference room where Richard Vale waited, suit, immaculate, hands folded. "Mrs. Hart," he began smoothly, "my condolences. Your husband was a brilliant man." She didn't answer. "It's unfortunate he involved himself in matters beyond his understanding. People see corruption where there's only structure." Caleb cut in. "Spare us." "Why are we here?" Vale smiled thinly. "You deserve clarity. Mr. Hart wasn't a victim. He took company files and tried to sell them. His accident was tragic, but not foul play." Evelyn's jaw clenched. "That's a lie." "Is it?" Vale's tone softened, almost pitying. "We found transactions linked to your account money from his terminal days before his death." Her pulse stumbled. "That's impossible." Caleb leaned forward. "You forged them." Vale stood. "I admire your loyalty, Mr. Monroe, but loyalty doesn't change evidence. Consider this a courtesy. Drop your accusations before they become legal disasters." He gestured toward the guard. "See them out." They were escorted out without a word. In the car, Evelyn pressed her forehead to her hands. "He's making my husband sound guilty." "That's how he works," Caleb said. "He builds lies big enough to bury the truth." "What if people believe him?" she asked. "They will," he said quietly. "Until we prove otherwise." The wipers droned as they drove. A car behind them honked twice, then sped past, splashing water across the road. Caleb followed it with his eyes. "We're being watched." At home, she locked the door twice. He helped her pull the blinds. You shouldn't stay alone tonight. If I leave, they'll think I'm afraid. This isn't pride, he said. It's survival. Then tell me where safety is, she whispered. It isn't anywhere I've been. He had no answer. When he left, the house felt hollow. The coffee had cooled. She emptied the cups, rinsed them, and stood at the sink until the water ran clear. The baby shifted slow and heavy. From the porch came a faint creak. Her chest tightened. The mail slot moved, an envelope sliding through. She waited, then picked it up. A photograph. Her husband in veils, smiling in a lab. On the back, scrawled words, he chose his side. She tore it in half and dropped it in the trash. Beyond the trees, Vailtech's lights glowed, steady, a pale pulse against the horizon. She closed the curtains and sat on the edge of the bed. The baby pushed against her ribs. She placed her hand over the movement, whispering, "We're not done yet." The words carried no promise, only breath and exhaustion, the kind that fills a house when the night refuses to end. She rose before dawn. Every floorboard, every passing car had kept her awake. She tucked the folder under her arm, the one with her husband's letters. Caleb had told her to wait, to let him arrange a meeting in Portland. But waiting never saved anyone. When the bus reached Portland, she followed the crowd into the terminal. The city moved differently, voices layered over traffic, footsteps echoing off concrete. Caleb waited by a newspaper stand, checking his watch. Relief tangled with annoyance in her chest. "You shouldn't have come alone," he said, taking her bag. "I needed to see the files myself." He led her to the county records office, a dull building that smelled faintly of old paper and cleaner. They waited at the counter until a young clerk appeared. Caleb handed over a form. Vailtech Archives Engineering Division, 3 years ago. The clerk glanced at it, vanished into the back. Evelyn's eyes drifted to the bulletin board, missing Pets Community Drive's guitar lessons. Ordinary lives, pinned in neat rows. 2 boxes arrived. Caleb opened one, papers bound by rusted clips. Budget charts, maintenance logs, routine, until her husband's name appeared beside internal whistleblower alert. Her pulse jumped. He'd reported fund diversion in Vailtech's infrastructure project. Below the memo, stamped in red, "Dismissed, classified." "He tried to stop them," she murmured. Caleb nodded. "And someone stopped him." Another folded page lay inside, a maintenance log from the day he died. Caleb scanned it. He wasn't scheduled for that section. They lured him there. Evelyn gripped the folder. "So we take this to the police. They won't move without proof. Vail ordered it. We need the missing server logs. They'll be buried in headquarters." "I still have his employee badge," she said. "They never took it back." He studied her. "It might work. It's dangerous. Everything is now." They copied the documents and left. She bought a sandwich she couldn't eat. The street smelled faintly of oil. Across the road, a man from her bus stood pretending to scroll his phone. Caleb noticed her change in expression. "What, he followed me from Ashbury. Get in the cab." They rode to the terminal without speaking. Caleb kept checking the mirror. By the time they arrived, the man was gone. At the ticket counter, Evelyn bought a single return pass. Caleb said he'd stay to verify the data through his contact. "Keep the copies safe," he told her. "Don't trust anyone." "I stopped trusting a long time ago." The ride home dragged on. She watched trees, billboards, half-built houses blur past. When the bus stopped near her street, the sky had already darkened. She walked quickly, passing the same fences and empty yards. The porch light flickered as she unlocked the door. Everything looked untouched. She hid the folder under a loose floorboard, covered it with a rug, and sat trying to steady her breath. The refrigerator hummed. She poured water, barely swallowed a sip. The baby pressed against her ribs. "I know," she whispered. "I'm trying." Drawing the curtains, she noticed movement by the fence. For a second, she thought of Caleb, but he was still in Portland. A figure paused, then left something on the gatepost. She waited before going out. The cold bit through her coat. An envelope hung there, sealed with black tape. "A note, we warned you once." Caleb called from Portland each day, his tone caught between fatigue and hope. "The files are being verified," he told her once. "If they hold, we'll have proof Vailtech funneled public money into shell accounts. Then what then? They'll fight harder." A pause. "How are you holding up?" "I'm managing," she said, true in the plainest sense. That afternoon, she fixed the leaky faucet with a wrench she barely knew how to use. The baby pressed low, reminding her to rest. She sat a while. Fear had grown quiet as if it no longer had a place to go. 2 days later, Caleb's car rolled up the drive, gravel crunching. She met him at the door. "I thought you were still in Portland." "I was." My contact vanished office cleared no trace. He carried a thick folder. "I think Vale's cleaning house. They know we're close." She let him in. He spread papers across the table, bank records, memos, technical logs. "This file, Helix subproject, it links your husband's team to the laundering. He tried to report it. They rewrote the logs after his death, so it wasn't an accident." "No," he said quietly. "It was a cleanup." The words stung. She folded the papers before her thoughts could follow. "You should stay at my place," he urged. "They're still watching this house." "I can't. This is my home. You can't defend yourself alone." "I'm not alone," she said, touching her belly. That ended the argument. "Promise you'll call if anything feels wrong." She nodded. He left before dark, promising to return tomorrow. She reread the files long after he'd gone, tracing every name: Vale, his lawyers, the sheriff. Each signature carried a piece of rot. When she went to latch the door, an envelope caught in the frame. Sharp handwriting: "Let it die, Mrs. Hart." Nothing else. She burned it over the sink, watching the paper curl into ash. Smoke lingered, thin and bitter. Sleep came in fragments. Corridors, locked rooms, her husband's voice cut short. The baby's kicks woke her sharp against her ribs. "We're all right," she whispered, though she wasn't sure. By dawn, calm had replaced exhaustion. She climbed to the attic, sorting through boxes, old clothes, receipts, wedding photos. In the last box, a small recorder tumbled out, wrapped in a faded handkerchief. Her hands trembled, pressing play. A click, then static. Her husband's voice came through, worn but steady. "If you hear this, Evie, I didn't get out. Vale's project isn't about power lines. It's about control. They're building something beneath the plant." The message stopped there, no signature, no goodbye. She played it again, slower. The same break, the same abrupt end, like he'd been cut off mid-breath. She sat still, unsure whether to cry or move. When Caleb called that evening, she told him about the recording. His tone sharpened. "Don't keep it there. Bring it to me tomorrow. It could be what we need." "I will," she said, staring at the small device. Evelyn left before dawn. Caleb had told her to meet near the old Vale Tech plant. "I need you to hear something," he'd said, his voice thin, strain. The bus was nearly empty. She sat by the glass, tracing a line through fog. Warehouses blurred past. Her reflection looked faint, almost colorless. The baby shifted once. She pressed her palm to her stomach. "Just a little longer," she murmured. At the edge of town, Caleb waited by the gate, shirt wrinkled, eyes restless. "You brought it." She handed him the recorder. "It still works." Cuts off halfway. He scanned the lot, lowering his tone. "Vale's wiping everything, reports, backups, logs. The only surviving data's in that building." He nodded toward the plant, gray concrete sprawling behind rusted fencing. "You plan to go in, I can get us inside." He held up a worn badge. "A friend left it behind. If we find the original files, this ends." Fear told her to leave. Caleb's words stopped her. "They already think we're guilty. We might as well be right." The side path was overgrown, warning signs half buried in weeds. The door opened after 2 failed swipes. Stale air hit them, thick with dust and faint machinery hum. They moved through narrow halls cluttered with scraps of another time, broken chairs, old clipboards, a mug beside a dead plant. Caleb whispered, "Server rooms in the lower level." Behind a metal door, stairs led down into the dark. He pried the next gate open with a screwdriver. The clang echoed, then faded. Rows of old terminals blinked weakly in the server room. Caleb plugged in a drive. Lines of data rolled across the monitor. Here, the archived logs. Every transaction Valetech tried to erase. Evelyn leaned closer. Her husband's ID appeared beside a red note access revoked file flagged for removal. The timestamp matched the night he died. "He was shut down that same night," she whispered. Caleb typed fast. "Once the drive fills, we go." A door slammed above them. Both froze. Footsteps descended, steady, unhurried. Evelyn pressed against the wall, clutching the recorder. A calm voice followed. "Mr. Monroe, Mrs. Hart." "You shouldn't be here." Richard Vale entered with 2 men. "I warned you," he said softly. "Curiosity is a dangerous form of faith." Caleb stood firm. "You killed him, didn't you?" Vale exhaled like someone correcting a child. "Your husband was naive. He thought truth carried weight. Power belongs to those who write the record. Evelyn's hands trembled as she pressed play. Her husband's voice cracked through the static. If you hear this, Evie, I didn't get out. Vale's project isn't about power lines. It's about control. Vale's composure slipped. Where did you get that? Caleb's jaw tightened. It's already gone to the press. It hadn't, but she stayed silent. One guard stepped forward, then stopped at the sound of sirens. Vale's calm fractured. Even if I fall, he muttered, you'll fall with me. Caleb grabbed Evelyn's arm, pulling her toward the rear exit. Sirens grew louder. Cold air hit her lungs like a shock. Police cars lined the gate. Someone must have reported movement at the plant. Caleb pressed the flash drive into her hand. Hide this. If they take me, they won't, she said. Though the words rang hollow, an officer shouted for them to stop. Vale was already speaking to another group, his tone practiced unbothered. Caleb lifted his hands slowly. Evelyn hid the drive in her coat, heartbeat pounding against it. Questions came in bursts, too many voices, too much noise. Caleb argued, showing his ID. She couldn't focus. Someone guided her to the curb. The last thing she saw was Vale turning toward her mouth, curling into a patient, satisfied smile. A hand touched her shoulder. Ma'am, do you need a medic? She shook her head. All she could think of was the flash drive warming against her palm. The holding room smelled of disinfectant. Evelyn sat on a hard chair, hands resting on her stomach. The officer had stopped asking questions, leaving a half-filled clipboard and a bottle of water she didn't touch. Across the table, Caleb spoke in low bursts to another officer, shirt half untucked, hair damp. She couldn't make out the words, only the edge of frustration. When he turned toward her, his eyes carried the dull light of someone who'd lost too many times. They're releasing you, he said, but we have to leave the drive. They want to inspect it. They can't, she whispered. Vale will get it first. They're the police, Evelyn. We can't just... Yes, we can. You copied the files, didn't you? He hesitated enough for her to know. Part of it. The rest got corrupted when the power went out. She drew a slow breath. Then they'll call it nothing, and he'll walk free. Caleb rubbed his temples. Let them think it's over. I'll find a way. They were escorted out soon after. Vale was gone. His car had already been towed. Reporters waited by the gate shouting questions, neither answered. Evelyn climbed into the car, the motion making her wince. Caleb drove wordlessly. Farmland blurred past puddles, poles, open fields. The silence between them carried everything they couldn't fix. Finally he spoke. The drive's probably in evidence by now. Vale owns most of that department. But the audio, your husband's message, might be enough. It's not, she said. People don't want truth. They want quiet. He glanced her way. You sound like him. Maybe that's why he married me. The baby kicked, sharp and sudden. She pressed her hand to her belly. He talked about the future, she murmured. Simple things. Fixing the porch. Teaching our kid to ride a bike. I thought they were small dreams. Now they feel too big. Caleb stayed silent until the town came into view. He stopped at the corner. Go home. I'll meet you tonight with what's left. Be careful, she said. At home, the mailbox spilled flyers and unpaid bills. She left them. The faint trace of burnt paper still clung to the living room. She made tea out of habit and sat by the window until her heartbeat slowed. Across the street, curtains shifted. She no longer cared who watched. Fear stretched too thin, lost its teeth. Near dusk, Caleb called. Someone broke into my office, he said. Files are gone. Laptop too. Everything almost. But I sent the audio to a friend at the local station. If they air it once, Vale can't bury it. That's dangerous. So is silence. The line cut. She paced, unable to stop moving. Moments later, the lights flickered. The refrigerator went still. A car idled beyond the fence, no headlights, a shadow behind the wheel. She turned off the lamp and crouched by the wall. The engine rumbled, then rolled away. She counted to 50 before standing. When power returned, she made toast she couldn't taste, hands trembling as she spread the butter. Her phone buzzed. It's happening. Tune in now. She turned on the radio, static, then her husband's voice steady through the crackle. Vale's project isn't about power lines. It's about control. Her throat closed. Caleb's voice followed, explaining how the tape was recovered. Then came another, Vale's distant but clear. If this leaks, you know what to do. A noise from the street drew her to the curtain. Neighbors were stepping out, phones raised, someone shouting, "It's all over the news." The broadcast rolled on. Reporters confirmed the clip had gone viral. Government officials demanded an inquiry. Vailtech had temporarily suspended operations. Evelyn sank into a chair. Relief came unevenly, like water through cracks. Her phone buzzed again, Caleb's message. "We did it, but I can't stay." She didn't answer. Sirens began echoing from the highway. The town that once ignored her was now awake, buzzing with fear and questions. By dawn, everyone knew. Cars crawled along Main Street. People gathered near the diner and post office, whispering the same question. What happens now? Evelyn moved through them with her hood low, feeling the hush whenever someone recognized her. A few nodded. One woman brushed her sleeve and whispered, "We heard the tape." You were right. It sounded less like praise than an apology, too late to matter. She bought milk and bread, left before anyone else spoke. The radio blared from the counter. Vailtech rated arrests, pending, shareholders denying knowledge. The mayor called for calm. At home, a police car waited by the fence. Two officers stood nearby. The older one removed his hat. "Mrs. Hart, we need you at the Marion County Courthouse this afternoon. Mr. Vail requested your presence." "Requested?" she asked. "After all this, he's claiming the recordings were manipulated," the officer said, eyes lowering. Her stomach tightened. She signed the papers, changed clothes, and slipped the recorder into her bag, the one thing she still trusted. The courthouse felt colder than before. Reporters crowded the hall. Caleb found her near the entrance, pale but steady. "You shouldn't have come alone." "I'm not," she said. "You're here?" They entered together. Vail sat at the defense table, calm as ever, his suit pressed, eyes unblinking. When he saw her, a faint smile crossed his lips, quick, controlled. Arguments began over authenticity. Vail's lawyer called the tapes fabrications. Caleb countered with timestamps and transfer logs. Voices clashed until the judge called Evelyn to the stand. She raised her hand for the oath, her fingers cold. "Mrs. Hart," the lawyer began, "you claim the voice on this tape belongs to your husband." "It does. You're certain it's been years?" "I've heard it enough to know." He leaned in. "Yet this recording surfaced only after weeks of investigation." "Isn't it possible you staged it?" She gave a short, dry laugh. "If I could stage all this, I wouldn't be standing here begging for justice." A low stir ran through the room. The judge motioned for order. "Do you have proof Mr. Vail killed your husband?" the lawyer asked. "No," she answered evenly, "but he left proof of what Vail was doing." "That's why he died." Vail rose, voice smooth. "Your Honor, I've served this community for decades. I've made mistakes, but I didn't harm this woman's husband." Evelyn turned toward him. "You destroyed him," she said quietly, "and you didn't even have to touch him." The lawyer objected. The judge waved him off. She continued. "He worked for you because he believed in what you were building. When he found out you were stealing from the people funding it, he tried to stop it. You made sure he couldn't." Vail's calm cracked. "You think you understand how this world works? You and your dead husband Caleb stood." "That's enough." The judge called for recess. Reporters surged as they left the courtroom. Flashes, questions, noise. Evelyn kept walking, one hand on her belly, the other clutching the bag. In a corner of the hallway, Caleb said, "We've done all we can. It's up to the court now." She nodded, unsure. "He still has people everywhere. Even if he loses, someone else will cover for him." "Then we make it too loud to bury," he said. They stepped into the drizzle. The courthouse steps were slick exhaust hanging low. From across the street came shouting, then whistles. Evelyn didn't turn. She just kept moving until they reached the car. Caleb opened the door. "I'll drive." Halfway home, the radio cut in. Breaking news: Richard Vail in custody again for obstruction and witness tampering. Evelyn leaned back, eyes closed, unsure whether to feel relief or just empty. "It's over," Caleb said quietly, though he didn't sound convinced. "Nothing's ever over," she replied. "But maybe it's enough for now." Neither of them spoke. The road stretched ahead, wet and long, a silence that no longer pressed on her chest. The kettle hissed while she sorted through the papers scattered across the table. Some pages were still damp from the courthouse. Caleb had called earlier. He was leaving town for a few days. "They'll keep pushing," he'd warned. "Don't let your guard down." She hadn't told him about Vale's lawyer waiting near the steps after the hearing. The man had smiled too easily. You've won the crowd for now, Mrs. Hart, but the crowd forgets. Money doesn't. He'd slipped her a card she hadn't touched since. It still sat on the counter, edges curling. By dawn, the storm had thinned. The yard was a mess of mud and gravel. She pulled on her boots and went to the porch. A newspaper lay wrapped in plastic. The headline read, "Vailtech CEO faces federal charges." Her chest tightened. Not relief, just space left behind where tension had lived too long. The phone rang. She wiped her hands and picked up. A faint voice came through, distorted. "You think this ends with him? He's not the only one." Then it cut off. She stood still, trying to place the tone too calm, too young to be Vale. She called Caleb, but it went straight to voicemail. By noon, she'd convinced herself it was a prank. Still, she locked the doors, drew the curtains halfway, made a sandwich she didn't finish. The baby shifted under her ribs. "I know," she murmured. "Almost there." A knock interrupted the sound of running water. 3 short taps. She froze, then opened the door a crack. A young woman in a raincoat stood there, holding a brown envelope. "Mrs. Hart, yes." "I'm from the district office," the woman said, handing it over. A formality and additional statement about the Vailtech files. Evelyn thanked her and closed the door. The envelope held no form, only a photograph. Caleb stood in what looked like a motel parking lot, speaking to a man she didn't know. On the back, "He's not who you think he is." Her balance slipped. The handwriting matched the earlier notes. She called Caleb, no answer. Then her phone buzzed with a new message, a link. Against her better judgment, she clicked. The video showed her husband arguing with someone at Vailtech. Caleb's voice drifted faintly in the background. The date stamp was off by months. Through static, her husband said, "If I don't make it, make sure Monroe delivers the files." Caleb's last name. She sank into the chair, breath stalling. The fragments realigned Caleb had known. Maybe he'd worked for them once. Maybe guilt had turned him later. The door creaked. She looked up, nothing there. Still, she checked the locks and glanced through the curtains. A car she didn't recognize idled across the street. Instinct told her to leave. The baby kicked sharp and rhythmic. She steadied herself, packed a small bag, slipped the folder of documents inside, and stepped out. The car's engine started the moment she moved. Her neighbor called from the porch. "Everything all right, just heading to the clinic," she answered. It wasn't a lie. She drove toward the hospital. The car followed for miles before turning off near the bridge. Her shoulders loosened. At the hospital, a nurse checked her in. "You're early," she said. "But not by much." Evelyn nodded. She placed the folder on the bedside table. The nurse asked if anyone should be called. "No," she replied. Through the thin curtain, a man asked for her by name. Polite, calm, unfamiliar. The nurse told him to wait. Evelyn gripped the sheet. Then came the voice, Evie. "Caleb, I need to talk to you." "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I know. But listen, Vale's gone, but others are cleaning up. They'll come for what you still have. Let me take it." She turned toward the sound, but the nurse came back a moment later. "No one's there." The hallway stood empty. Hours blurred together. Nurses drifted in and out, their movements, steady, their words soft. Evelyn floated between pain and stillness. Thoughts circling fragments, Caleb's voice, the photograph, the folder by her bed. A nurse adjusted the IV and offered a gentle smile. "You're progressing fine." First child, Evelyn nodded too, drained to answer. Kindness hurt in its own way. Footsteps and rolling carts moved beyond her room, someone laughing down the corridor. The ordinary rhythm steadied her. She closed her eyes and rode the next wave. By afternoon, the pain sharpened, contractions were steady and close. A doctor she didn't recognize entered with a clipboard. "Doing well," he said. About an hour left. His badge read, Dr. Warner. The name meant nothing yet. Something about him unsettled her. When he left, she asked the nurse quietly, "How long has he been here?" "Transferred last month," the nurse replied, adjusting the sheets. Evelyn only nodded. Minutes later, the door creaked again. Another nurse slipped in, whispered something, and both stepped into the hall. Evelyn caught fragments, authorization, visitor request. Her pulse quickened. When they returned, one hesitated. "A man's asking to see you. Says he's family." "What's his name?" "He didn't give one. Said you'd know." "No visitors," she said. The nurse nodded and left. Then came a knock, not at the main door, but the smaller one to the adjoining storage room. 3 light taps. She stayed still. The sound stopped. Her pulse raced, but the next contraction drowned it. She gripped the rail until the wave passed muscles trembling. When she looked again, the door was still. A nurse returned cheerful. Almost there. You're doing great. Evelyn nodded, unable to still her hands. Time fractured. Voices merged, counting encouragement orders, and then a sharp new cry split the room. Relief loosened her chest. The nurse placed a small, warm body on her chest. It's a girl. The baby's fingers curled around her thumb. For a breath, the world shrank to that fragile grasp. Evelyn whispered something even she couldn't hear. When they took the baby to be cleaned, she lay still. The quiet after birth felt wide and strange. Her gaze fell on the folder at the table's edge. The doctor picked it up absently. That's mine, she managed. He returned it without a word. Later, when the baby slept in the bassinet, she opened the folder. Pages wrinkled, corners smudged. Her husband's handwriting ran along the margins, brief notes, reminders, fragments of thought. She traced the ink with her finger, as if it might still carry warmth. Footsteps passed beyond the door, a nurse calling for someone down the hall. Evelyn turned to the bassinet. The tiny chest rose and fell steady as breathing itself. She leaned back, exhaustion sinking deep. Not peace, just stillness, the kind that follows long storms. When she woke, the lights were dimmed. Someone had left water on the tray. The baby slept soundly. Everything felt fragile, ordinary. She reached for the recorder and pressed play, not from fear, but to hear his voice once more. If you hear this, Evie, I didn't get out. Vale's project isn't about power lines. It's about control. The tape clicked off, but beneath the static, a faint echo. Trust her. She'll know what to do. She rewound it, listened again. The second voice was faint. Maybe Caleb's, maybe someone else's. It didn't matter. The meaning was clear. She wouldn't run anymore. Dawn crept across the horizon. Nurses resumed their rounds. A laugh rose from the reception desk, light and fleeting. The baby stirred, one hand stretching as if reaching for something unseen. Evelyn touched the small fingers, holding on long enough to feel their warmth. A nurse entered, asking, "Ready for breakfast, I think." So she said, adjusting the blanket around her daughter. The smell of toast settled through the room, plain and human, like the start of something she could finally face. 2 days later, they discharged her. Evelyn held her daughter close, the tiny breaths warm against her neck. A nurse walked her to the taxi stand. "You'll be fine," she said with a real smile. Evelyn nodded, unsure but grateful. The ride home stayed wordless. The driver glanced at her through the mirror recognition without question. The case had been everywhere, her story already rewritten by strangers. She let them. It was easier when others filled in the blanks. She checked each room more out of habit than fear, until the baby's faint whimper drew her back. She placed the child in the cradle she'd set up weeks earlier and rocked it gently. "You're safe," she whispered, though the words were mostly for herself. On the table lay an unmarked envelope thicker than usual. She opened it carefully. It held financial statements and a single note. He didn't act alone. The handwriting wasn't Caleb's. She refolded the paper, pressing her hand over it, as if that could steady the unease tightening in her chest. Later, Caleb called from an unknown number. His voice was rough, quiet. "You got the documents?" "I did." "Where are you moving?" "Doesn't matter where. They're pulling in everyone who touched the files. I'm sending you a backup if I don't reach DC. It goes to a journalist I trust. Don't open it unless you have to." "Why me? Because you're the only one they underestimated." She almost smiled. "And you, I'll figure it out. Take care of her. That's what matters now." The line cut before she could answer. She stared at the phone until the screen went dark, then turned to the baby sleeping, her small hands curled beneath her chin. The next day, Vale Tech began to collapse. Board members resigned, investigators unearthed years of hidden records. Evelyn folded laundry while the radio droned on the announcer's calm tone at odds with his words. When Caleb's name surfaced among those wanted for questioning, the shirt slipped from her hands. She ignored the phone for the rest of the day, watching cars drift along the street, neighbors pretending life hadn't changed. She wondered how many still believed in the illusion her husband had tried to expose. By dusk, she sat by the crib rereading the letter. He didn't act alone. The phrase looped in her head, a riddle without answer. Vale was gone, but the structure he'd built still hummed somewhere beneath it all. A knock interrupted her thoughts, two quick, one soft. She froze, then opened the door a sliver. A young man in a postal jacket held a small box. Delivery for Mrs. Hart. I didn't order anything. Signature required. She signed, took the package, and closed the door. The return label was blank. Under folded newspaper lay a flash drive taped to an index card, for when you're ready. She waited before plugging it into the old laptop. Folders filled the screen, dates, reports, recordings. One was labeled Meeting. She opened it. The footage showed Vale at a conference table with three men. Her husband stood near the door, voice sharp. You're diverting public energy reserves. That's theft. Vale leaned back, calm. It's efficiency. Don't make this moral. Her husband slammed his palms on the table. You can't keep hiding this. The image froze on his face, anger and resolve caught mid-motion. Evelyn closed the laptop, pressing both hands over the lid until the heat faded. The baby stirred. She lifted her, gently held her close until the small body settled. You'll never know him, she whispered, but he tried. Thunder rolled somewhere, distant, the scent of a coming storm in the air. She stood by the glass as drops began to scatter across it. The flash drive's small red light blinked once, then dimmed. She'd seen enough. Some truths didn't need chasing, not tonight. She turned the lamp low and rocked the baby until her breathing slowed to match her own. Sirens passed in the distance, fading toward the hills. She stayed still until they were gone, then laid the baby back in the cradle, checked the locks, and sat again, not to work, just to sit. She picked up a pen and wrote two words on the corner of the envelope, for her. Folding it, she slipped it into the drawer beside the recorder. The baby made a small sound, half sigh, half yawn. Evelyn leaned her head back, listening until that sound was all that remained. A knock came at the door. When she opened it, a woman stood on the porch with a government ID and a polite expression. Mrs. Hart, I'm Agent Reyes, Department of Energy. We're finalizing the Vale Tech investigation. May I come in? Evelyn stepped aside. The agent shook rain from her coat, scanning the cradle, the papers, the faint trace of coffee. You've been through a lot, she said. I'm sorry for your loss. Everyone keeps saying that, Evelyn replied. Reyes gave a small nod. We're almost done, but one memo's missing, a file your husband mentioned before he died. Do you know where it is? He never told me. Just said it was dangerous. The agent didn't press. If it surfaces, contact me. She placed a card on the table. Be careful who you trust. Not everyone from Vale's circle is gone. When she left, Evelyn stood by the door staring at the card until the baby stirred. She lifted her, gently rocking until the crying eased. We're okay, she whispered. We just keep moving. She spent the afternoon sorting papers into boxes. The flash drive Caleb had sent sat at the table's edge, heavier than the rest combined. She considered destroying it, firewater, anything, but couldn't. Later, a car stopped near the gate. Caleb stepped out, thinner eyes hollow from exhaustion. She opened the door before he could knock. You shouldn't be here. I had to see you, he said. They're after the rest of the files. Vale's gone, but his backers aren't. Someone's cleaning house. Then take them. She gestured to the boxes. I don't want them here. He glanced around, his expression softening when he saw the baby. She looks like him. Evelyn handed him the folders. Give them to someone you trust. I'm done. You can't be, he said. You're the reason this broke open. People listen now. I didn't want to be heard, she said quietly. I just wanted to survive. The baby whimpered and she turned away to lift her. Caleb's tone softened. You should leave town. Start over somewhere small. I've lived small, she said. It never helped. He nodded. Then promise me one thing, keep the drive safe. It's what Vale feared most. I already have. He lingered a moment, then picked up the folders. If you ever need, I won't, she said, gentler than she meant. When he left, Evelyn sat on the floor, rocking the baby and staring at the flash drive. Her husband's voice from the tape echoed in her mind. They'll try to silence anyone who listens. She woke before sunrise. The house held that soft stillness before day began. She lay still, listening to the baby's slow breathing and the faint rustle at the shutters. The child stirred once, then settled again. The radio murmured, full of names and headlines that no longer reached her, indictments, resignations, blame circling like weather. The machine that had taken so much was devouring itself, and that was enough. After breakfast, she wrapped the baby in a clean blanket and stepped onto the porch. The sky was pale washed of color. The yard smelled faintly of grass and damp soil. She hadn't mowed in months. Wildflowers had taken over, growing where they wanted. It no longer looked neglected, just free. A neighbor waved from across the street. "Morning, Evelyn. You holding up, doing what I can." He nodded, satisfied. People had stopped asking for details. She was glad they did. The baby fussed softly. Evelyn rocked her and whispered, "You're safe. That's all that matters." The phone rang twice. "We're closing the case," Agent Reyes said. "Vale won't see daylight again. The court froze his assets, some traced back to accounts your husband flagged years ago." "You did good work." "He did the work," Evelyn said. "I suppose. Still, it wouldn't have come out without you." When the call ended, she stood holding the receiver. Relief mixed with something she couldn't name, grief without direction. She cleaned to fill the hours, sweeping, folding, straightening. The baby slept through most of it. Each time Evelyn glanced her way, gratitude and guilt rose together, grateful the child existed, guilty for the world she'd entered. By afternoon, she decided to walk to the post office. The road was lined with shallow puddles reflecting pieces of sky. The baby slept in her carrier fingers, tucked beneath her chin. At the counter, Evelyn handed the clerk an envelope addressed to the district office. "It's just documents," she said. "Nothing urgent. You want tracking? No need. It'll get there." A letter from Agent Reyes arrived 2 weeks later, the Department of Energy seal pressed into the envelope. The handwriting looked almost casual. Inside was a short note: "The court ruled in your favor. Vale's assets have been seized. You'll receive compensation for the damages caused by his company's actions. Take care of yourself." Evelyn folded it once, set it on the counter. The faucet dripped, slow, steady. She tightened the handle not because it fixed much, but because it gave her hands something to do. The baby, stronger now, babbled on the rug, tugging at the corner of a blanket. Evelyn crouched beside her, letting small fingers wrap around her sleeve. "We're getting somewhere," she murmured, bit by bit. Among the mail, a newspaper lay half folded. She skimmed the headlines: "Valetech CEO sentenced to 25 years. Whistleblower testimonies key to conviction." Her name appeared once, buried in the last paragraph. No photo, no quote. She traced the letters until they smudged. The town had settled back into its rhythm. The diner reopened, church bells rang again. People waved when she passed with the stroller. It wasn't friendliness exactly, more like weary respect. Everyone had lost something to Vale's reach, even if they hadn't known it. Caleb hadn't called. Maybe he'd escaped. Maybe he hadn't. She hoped he was alive, though the thought of seeing him again stirred both gratitude and unease. Some debts stayed tangled, no matter how time pulled at them. She walked downtown in the afternoon. The courthouse stood across the square, protest banners gone. The bakery was open, kids shared ice cream, and old man polished the benches. Ashbury, in its stubborn way, was healing. At a coffee stand, the barista recognized her but said nothing. "Same as before." "Yeah, small one." He handed it over without charge. "Town's better off because of you." She nodded. Just as she'd learned, didn't fix much. It didn't quiet nights or fill empty chairs. It only made the noise of the world a little less cruel. She sat halfway up the courthouse steps, sipping, watching people drift in and out. A reporter passed, speaking into a mic about historic accountability. She couldn't tell if he believed it. A woman approached, a folder under her arm. "Mrs. Hart, my husband worked maintenance for Valetech. When they closed his plant, he lost his pension. Because of your case, we're getting it back." "I didn't do much." "You did enough." The woman hurried off before Evelyn could reply. The clouds broke. She finished her coffee, dropped the cup in the trash, and turned home as the courthouse clock struck noon. The walk felt longer but lighter. She stopped at the market for groceries, breadfruit, a few jars of baby food. The cashier cooed at the baby and smiled. The exchange felt simple, ordinary. The day stretched ahead, easy and unhurried. She thought of her husband, not the end, but the way he used to talk about building things that lasted. "What you build reflects who you are," he'd said once. She hadn't understood it then. Now it made sense. She took the baby in, laid her down for a nap. Papers still cluttered the table. Evelyn gathered them, the letters, receipts, newspaper, and packed them in a box marked archive. She labeled it closed, not as a statement, just to keep things neat. The phone rang again. "Just wanted to tell you," Agent Reyes said, "Valetech's properties are being turned into a community fund. The court approved your husband's name for the scholarship. He would have liked that. I think so too. After the call, she stood by the glass, resting her forehead there a moment. The sky had cleared pale and calm. The baby's cry broke the stillness, and Evelyn went to her. Spring came quietly to Ashbury. Caleb sent a brief email. I'm fine. Heading west. Keep what you've built. Don't look back. She read it twice, then deleted it. There was nothing left between them except the uneasy gratitude of two people who'd survived the same storm. By April, tulips lined the fence, too bright at first, then strangely comforting. Each afternoon, she carried the baby outside, sitting on the steps with a blanket, while the wind carried the scent of damp grass. Letters arrived from strangers, former employees, students, families who'd received aid from the new scholarship fund bearing her husband's name. All were kind, full of thanks. She read the first few, then kept the rest in a shoebox under the bed. Gratitude was gentle but heavy. She didn't know where to put it. One Wednesday, she came home from the market to find Agent Reyes waiting by the porch. The agent looked tired but smiled at the baby. I was nearby, she said. Thought I'd check in. You don't give up easily. Part of the job. Reyes leaned on the railing. It's done now, the case. The last appeals are over. So it's really finished. It is. What you did will carry farther than you think. The town just wants to live, Evelyn said. That's enough. They talked about the garden, the library renovation funded by Vale's forfeited accounts. When Reyes left, Evelyn watched her car fade down the road, then turned to see her daughter reaching toward the tulips, as if trying to catch color in her hands. She lifted the baby, felt the warmth of her cheek against her neck. Your father would have liked this, she murmured. The child sighed, content. Evening came soft and slow. Evelyn cooked stew and bread ate, while light slipped across the table. The baby banged a spoon against a bowl, the sound steady as a heartbeat. After cleaning up, she stepped onto the porch. The sky dimmed from orange to gray. Across the street, porch lights blinked on. Someone was grilling. Laughter drifted from two houses over. Life was returning in uneven waves, and she found herself moving with it. The phone buzzed, a call from the scholarship committee, asking if she'd attend next month's dedication. She said she'd think about it. Later, she rocked the baby to sleep, rhythm easy and sure. When the small body went still, she laid her in the crib and lingered there, listening to the soft breathing fill the room. Her gaze caught the notebook on the kitchen table. She began to write again, not about grief, but about small things. The smell of soil, the first bloom, the baby's laugh when the neighbor's dog barked. Each word felt lighter than the one before. She left the notebook open, pages curling slightly at the edges. Tomorrow she'd plant herbs along the fence, basil, maybe rosemary, something that would take root and stay. She rinsed her cup, turned off the light, and walked toward the bedroom. The baby murmured in her sleep, a sound that almost passed for laughter. Evelyn smiled, steadying herself against the doorframe. The floorboards creaked beneath her steps. The sound no longer startled her. It was just the house breathing alive, waiting like everything else that had endured.